Hi, my name is Dr. Frank Therapoems. I'm a clinical psychologist, and this is my channel called Dr. Frank's Therapoems. Now, I'm the kind of doctor that's a clinical psychologist, and I've been a psychotherapist, clinical psychologist, for about 50 years. And recently retired, thought to myself, there might be things that I can share with people that could be found helpful that I learned over that period of time as a therapist. And one of the things I decided to do was to try to distill some major concepts down into some simple, rhyming, rhythmic poems that I call Therapoems. And the reason I call them Therapoems is because they're mostly related to topics that come up in therapy. And they're the kinds of metaphors and analogies that people remember later on. Oftentimes, long after their therapy's over, they may hold on to one of those metaphors, and it just gives them a reminder of what they have worked so hard on trying to accomplish. All right. Well, today's episode is called Yoga's Other Paths. Stretch your mind, too. So a lot of people are doing yoga these days, and that's great. I think 16% of U.S. adults, 73% of which are women and 28% are men, are regularly attending yoga classes, and they find that it helps ease stress, contributes to flexibility and strength conditioning and cardio, and for many it prepares the mind for spiritual focus and meditation. Now, 58% to 72% of practitioners cite spiritual growth as their motivation, and particularly for people who've been doing yoga for over 5 years, that increases up, towards the 72% part. But I got exposed to yoga the first time when I was in my early 20s, and I had already been doing meditation. I was fortunate to have been introduced to that by my mother and an uncle. But when I started regularly meditating, someone had mentioned to me, hey, you might want to try to do some yoga before you meditate. I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. I wasn't all that familiar with it at the time. But as I got into it, I found a book called Light on Yoga. I think it was out in the late 60s, and it was just re-edited and revised. And what I found was interesting about it is that earlier in my life, for high school and college, I was involved with track. And before we would do any kind of events or exercise, we always would do stretching. And a number of those stretches were similar to at least a handful of the yoga postures. So it was very familiar to me, and I already understood the necessity of stretching the body and spending time and working on breathing and just getting your mind set for competition. And many of you may know how you feel at the end of a long yoga class where you're in Savasana, and you just feel very comfortable and easy to just focus if you wanted to focus. So I thought, well, this seems to be a nice prelude to then sitting in meditation, which was how I first came to discover how it would benefit me. So the whole idea of pursuing spiritual growth was something that I was fascinated by. As a child, I was raised in the Catholic schools and certainly had a healthy dose of Catholicism. And for things I kept and other things I didn't, the questions were all asked. So those were important to me. And I started discovering other paths had different answers to some of those questions. But there certainly was a good part of Catholicism that seemed to hang true and have similarities to some of the other paths that I had explored, Buddhism. And I learned a little more about Hindu philosophy, and I was fortunate to be exposed to an organization called the Rosicrucians, which is a non-sectarian organization that also talks about mystical and metaphysical concepts. I first tried meditation itself as a college student in New York City with a group who practiced in the village of New York City. And I found that interesting. That group did a lot of chanting. It was the first time I ever tried chanting with a group, and came to find later on in my life when I pursued another teacher that the chanting itself induces a sort of trance state, which was really conducive to then moving into altered states, some of which become conducive to having insight. So I understood then, as I do now, that spiritual growth can come from many different paths. And that inspired the poem I'd like to share with you. It's called unity. And I'll read it to you now. Unity. Buddha, Mohammed, Krishna, and Jesus all took on missions where they sought to teach us. It doesn't matter which land they were from, and they wouldn't want us all to become like fighting school children that argue whose dad is bigger or better. That's virtually mad. It's said truth is one, but paths are many. So find one that suits instead of not any. Don't polarize over the teachers who came. They're spiritual leaders, each with his own name. Stop finding the issues that drive us apart. Instead, find compassion and love in your heart. With hope and forgiveness, we'll all live in peace. As brothers and sisters, and hatred will cease. Division and conflict will always persist until we seek unity and coexist. So there's many paths, and I like that idea that there's many ways to get there. There's not one way to go, and I think we have to respect and honor other people's paths. But yoga for me was something that offered a broad swath of techniques and ways of approaching getting spiritual insight. So I looked into yoga some more, and I found out that it has 5 paths. Some of you may be familiar with them. The one that most everyone does is hatha. There's variations of that, vinyasa, there's ashtanga, but most of them, the ones that are being offered in health clubs or in different places, typically require doing some asanas and some breath work. There's also karma yoga, which is selfless action, getting involved with people and doing things without wanting to be showy about taking credit for what you do. Another one is bhakti yoga, which is heartfelt devotion towards feeling love towards the Creator. And then there is jnana yoga, which is knowledge about seeking and finding knowledge and wisdom, and raja yoga, which is the path of meditation. It's called the royal path. So I've most regularly adopted 3 of these paths, and I give some emphasis to them in the next poem I'll share with you. It's called Yoga's Other Paths to Wisdom. While spiritual seekers of truth start with faith, their searching must end with insight. They can stretch their body and limber their spines and make sure their breathing is right. But earning the wisdom of spiritual truths requires that knowledge is gained. Like prepping the soil so seedlings will grow, the learning helps it be attained. Then once the new knowledge has been taken in and ideas get to germinate, while the sunshine brings light to help seedlings grow, our light grows as we meditate. There are all kinds of spiritual paths that exist, where all different seekers can learn. But increasing numbers choose yoga as theirs, and hope that on some day they'll earn, through physical postures and breathing control, from learning and meditation, the consciousness that reaps their intended goal, achieving self-realization. So try these 3 yogas and use them combined. And once all asanas are done, from jhana bring knowledge to a raja still mind, then all those self-insights will come. So, as you gathered from that last verse there, I'm going to talk more about jhana and raja yoga. And I was fascinated to find when I heard about more and learned more about jhana yoga, that it's basically taking the time to read spiritual scriptures and self-reflecting. It's a process of self-inquiry, and it's very existential. In a way, it asks, who am I? How is my true self different from my body and my ego? And it asks that we reflect deeply on spiritual teachings. Seeking to understand the nature of reality, aspects of jnana yoga are similar to the existential therapies. Now, I find existential psychotherapists such as Irvin Yalom, Viktor Frankl, and Rollo May all address similar kinds of concerns, at least in that one area of jnana yoga, about when clients come in and they're dealing with issues of death or freedom, or they feel lonely and they're dealing with isolation, or just looking for purpose and meaning in life. Therapy can get a little bit more cerebral in a way, reflective, more philosophic, in that it's not quite as focused on getting along in your marriage or raising your children. A lot of it starts getting to be more, where am I in terms of what brings meaning to my life? Now, jhana prepares you for insights. And the way that happens is, if any of you recall, at any point in time along the way in your schooling, particularly if you went to college, but it's not only in college, in high school, you'll always have to take preparatory courses before you take the ones that follow, because in psychology we call that being primed. If you've already had some knowledge about what the more advanced knowledge is about, it takes better, or else it can get that much more confusing. But I have another poem here, and this one is called Gunpowder and Coal. It's said that when people are already primed, they process new knowledge that's brought to their mind, while others who lack what must be learned before, when offered new thinking, they find it obscure. Metaphysical knowledge functions the same. Without prior learning, most seekers will claim its concept of consciousness seem recondite. They're abstract and foreign and hard to get right. But like all tall buildings that rise to the sky, their structural footing determines how high. So lay the foundations for that which you seek. The deeper your groundwork, the higher your peak. Be patient with where you are now in your quest, for whatever wisdom you seek to digest. As fire sparks gunpowder faster than coal, prepare to ignite for the height that's your goal. So there's that piece that maybe some people do intermittently on occasion, and there's many ways you can seek that spiritual knowledge. I mean, I am one who's always been interested both hearing different spiritual viewpoints of the various religions. I enjoy a kind of a comparative religion, looking for the common denominators that exist, But after you do that, there's another type of yoga that I believe is the place where you bring that knowledge, and you already have settled yourself physically by doing your asanas, and you have yourself in a place where maybe your body is able to sit for a while and not be uncomfortable, hopefully your health. And I would not eat a heavy meal before you meditate, but that's what the next type of yoga is, which is Raja Yoga, and it's called the Royal Path. It focuses on mastering the mind through meditation and self-discipline. This is the 8-limb path found in Ashtanga Yoga, a path seeking to harmonize body, mind, and spirit. So I encourage those of you who wish to increase your spiritual self-growth and who mostly practice the more mystical, physical types of yoga to maybe incorporate a little more jhana yoga, take a little time to read and study and gain knowledge, and to augment your yoga practice with meditation. These are experiences that you can get what I call positively addicted to. If you do them long enough, over time, they start, we're at the beginning in the concept of positive addictions. You need to apply yourself and sustain that activity over a period of time, and then you'll find that it actually starts drawing you to it. It's like people will say, I missed my run today, or I missed my meditation today. Whereas the negative addictions, they're immediately reinforcing, like drugs or alcohol, immediately get a buzz or you get that high, and that can create an addictive response, especially if it's chemically likely to cause the addiction within your system. But I would encourage you all, at least, the other yogas are fine. I just haven't incorporated them as much. But if you want to try to enhance your spiritual path and learn more, I would suggest to just combine the 3 I mentioned today, which is basically the Hatha Yoga asanas with some jhana yoga reading and understanding and learning and gaining knowledge, and then putting it all together with Raja Yoga, or a type of meditation that you're comfortable with. And you'll be surprised that you will establish with yourself a conducive state for the expansion of consciousness. And I mean by that, widening your bandwidth so that what you have prepared the ground for within yourself then becomes resonant with what you need or what would benefit you to come to mind. It's creative. It can be, doesn't always have to be about spirituality, but learning how to establish that state of mind will enable you to gain insights and be aware of things, and they'll surprise you over time. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. And in the future sessions, episodes, I'm going to talk more about consciousness and even a little bit about psychic abilities. Thank you. Oh, one last thing before I go. This is a community space, and I welcome any thoughts you might have, comments or suggestions about future episodes. You'll see my email posted at the end of the credits. And I'm hoping that some of the poems and the information may have struck a chord with you. And speaking of chords, and so for now, I'll say goodbye and hope you'll try to give some thought to what was taught, and then abide in a place of peacefulness with lots of happiness inside.
Dr. Frank's Therapoems was produced by The Splash Marketing. The poems and illustrations can be found in his book, Can I Be Frank? Poetic Insights that Empower and Inspire. Illustrations in the book are provided by Craig M. Lindamman. You're welcome to share these poems for non-profit purposes, but please remember to cite their source. Dr. Frank can be contacted at dr.frankstherapoems@gmail.com.